Hello there YouTube, my name's Chuggy and today I'm playing some Battlefield 4 Beta, playing some Conquest on Siege of Shanghai, and it is question time, part 42. Some say 42 is the meaning of life. Well, we're not going to perhaps go into that much detail this question time, but as always you guys have asked an amazing range of questions, from Formula 1 to DLC I'd add to Battlefield 3 to booing of Sebastian Vettel. There's quite a lot of amazing questions this week, and if you've never seen the series before, Question Time is me answering in complete honesty my views and whatnot to your great questions. Now, what are you seeing this week from me? Well, yet again, I've got some gameplay from Battlefield 4's beta, and today what you're going to see is me primarily actually use the M83, I'm not sure if it is the Barrett 50 cal, but basically the one-shot kill sniper, which you find up the top of this skyscraper here on the Siege of Shanghai map, and basically I go on a run with it. Due to good squad performance, I mean you can see it now, our sort of squad perks were maxed out, meaning I started with additional ammunition, meaning that when I picked the thing up, I actually had 22 rounds, plus 11 in the magazine, so lots of ammunition to play with, and I had some proper fun with it. And yeah, this is just us trying to hold all the territory we can, classic Conquest, and then obviously deal with attackers, and you know, attack some bases ourselves. So a lot of fun was had here. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it. And with that, let me get on to the questions this week. First question comes from Mr. Brian86, and they ask, what Formula 1 race do I want to go to, and am I bored by the dominance of Vettel? And this is something which actually a lot of people have been asking me as of late, for question time and elsewhere as well. So, regarding the domination of Mr. Vettel in this year's Formula 1 World Championship, yeah, as a fan of Formula 1 and a fan of motor racing, yeah, it does bore me, because, you know, as only Sebastian seems to be able to, he can pull out these massive gaps in you know, a few laps, and no one can quite catch up with him and stay with him from that point on. Which, you know, is well, I wouldn't say annoying. He's clearly got the car set up. You know, there's some speculation that there's some traction control and things on there potentially as well. But anyway, the long and short is that he has got that car set up very well, and you know, he's winning the races. I mean, for instance, take Suzuka. He had the fastest car and he had the best strategy, and he won the race. You can't really complain in those situations. You know, he deserved that win. I am being bored by it though, because you know, it's the same old stuff in and out, and you know, for example, Suzuka, our time, I had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to watch all the build-up and everything else, because that's what I wanted to do, and you know, that's quite early, and just to have, admittedly it was pretty interesting tactically, but you know, another Vettel win was a bit disheartening. As for which Formula 1 race I'd want to go to, that's quite tricky. Basically, you know, there's a list of 3 circuits that I must, before I die, go and watch a Formula 1 race at. Those being Silverstone, home of the British Grand Prix of course, Montreal, obviously my sort of second home Grand Prix, and then Spa. Purely on the grounds of Spa is a classic race circuit, and it's not too far from where I am, and you know, it's always produced some pretty interesting racing, and it's just a classic race circuit. So those are my 3. When I'll go to them, I don't know. It's very expensive. You know, to go to Canada costs me, you know, at least £700-800 just in airfare, let alone the tickets on top. So you know, it's not a cheap business, but I will get out to a race at some point. Which one of those 3? I don't know. Who knows? I might go to another one before that. I don't know. It will happen one day. I've never been to a live motor race, if you can believe that. You know, to spectate, but it's something which I will be doing, if I have the power, sooner rather than later. So Mr. Brian, thank you very much for 2 great questions to get us going this week for question time. Next question comes from Jack Richardson, and they ask, what would I like to see in Battlefield 4 DLCs, sort of weapons, maps, and that kind of thing? Well, good question, first of all. So one thing which I think would be neat to add is British weapons again. I'm of course biased in this regard, you know, I am a Brit, and I loved using the L85, the L86, the L96, as they were, you know, very effective weapons. You know, a bit of, I don't know, patriotism could be displayed while playing virtual shooting game, I don't know. I just felt they were really good weapons, and by the way, nice little tip here, sending up a dummy elevator. I think in this actual instance it didn't quite go to plan, because I think we got gunned down anyway, but just a few seconds you can catch the enemy out, perhaps get a round or two out. Yes, there we go. Oh no, we did survive this one. Well, I did, luckily. Matt was not so lucky. I think we just get caught out there. Anyway, so yes, the the DLC and things I'd like to see. British weapons being a Brit would be amazing. Some maps. I'd like to revisit a lot of maps actually from the Battlefield series. So we have Second Assault, which is maps from Battlefield 3, which will be cool. The likes of Metro or Caspian redone with Levolution and all this kind of stuff. So that should be quite interesting in its own regard. But I would like to see sort of returning maps from earlier games. Or I'd like to say Oasis from the Bad Company series to make a return. Or there's some Battlefield 1943 maps, 1942 maps, which I think would be quite good to play on. Not just necessarily Wake Islanders. Unlucky, sir, trying to jump me. Not just say like a Wake Island or anything like that, but there's some properly big maps there where you can get a number of tanks and but also infantry opportunity. Let's say. So there are a lot of maps which I think the Battlefield back catalogue's got, which could easily work in Battlefield 4, and I'd like to see those as well. So yeah, I think that pretty much rounds up my DLC. It'll be always nice to have new weapons and things, in particular British ones. But yeah, bringing back some old classic maps, ones which everyone enjoys, would be a good move for me as well. So Jack, thank you very much for the question there. Hope that answers that for you. Next question comes from Chimp Jr. and they ask, what is my opinion of Daniel Ricciardo, the Formula 1 driver? Well, he's been driving out of his skin. He's going up to Red Bull next year to take Mark Webber's seat, and deservedly so. I think he's done a great job this year. He's impressed me a lot. He's always been on my radar. Since he got into Formula 1, he clearly had the ability. Perhaps the car wasn't quite there, but he's definitely come on really well this year. Really interested to see what he can do in the Red Bull, and in particular with Vettel as a teammate, what happens as a dynamic there. So we shall see. But no, he's impressed me a lot, and yeah, let's roll on 2014, new cars, some new tracks, and we will see what plans out. So Chimp Jr., thank you very much for the question there. Next question comes from Derp Crew, and this is a really interesting question actually. They ask, what do I think about the new console from Mad Catz? Now, some of you might be going, console? And yeah, Mad Catz, the guys who make sort of third-party peripherals, controllers, fighting sticks, they've actually released a games console. It's based on the Android operating system, so, a la phones and tablets and that kind of thing. And yeah, it's very expensive. It's over £200, I believe, here in the UK, which when you think, well, you could get an Xbox 360 or a PS3 and a game for less, you kind of have to go, you're pricing yourself a bit out in the market. The other thing which is crossing my mind is if Sony ever released the Vita TV in Europe or the United States, that's Mad Catz offering dead, because it's basically the same box, a lot cheaper, and you can do more with it. So it's a nice idea. Credit to Mad Catz for giving it a go. I hope it's at least they make their money back. So they don't get necessarily too badly penalised for giving the idea a go. But I personally won't be buying one. I think it's a bit dear for what it is. So nice idea. We will have to see what happens. When some games come out for it and when it's out there in the wild. So Derp Crew, thank you very much for the question there. Really good question. Next question comes from SuperDan3188, and they have two questions. First of all, they ask, how am I getting on with the controls for Battlefield 4 on PS3? And they go on to say that they're finding it strange having a different button layout, and do I think that they should have made it sort of the same as Battlefield 3 for, or allow you to change it, a la the PC players? It has changed quite a lot, and it does take a little bit of getting used to. Once I put, 5-6 hours, it was, kind of, it felt natural, it didn't feel too weird. I think the biggest problem I have is I would go and spot someone, I'd bring up battle log, but with the next-gen consoles, I'm afraid to say, the button layout changes again, but trust me, it is a lot more natural. So I played on the Xbox One version at Eurogamer, and so for example, and I'm going to get this wrong, but I know the PlayStation controller R1 was spot, and L2 and R2, L2 was aim, R2 was fire, and you might go, ooh, that sounds a bit weird, but with the new triggers on the PS4, I can see that working very well. Certainly worked very well on the new Xbox controller, and the battle button was the back button on the 360 controller. It's going to be the trackpad on the PS4 controller, DualShock 4, which, trust me, you won't be hitting by mistake. R1 is just, it's the right place to have it, because it's where your fire used to be. So hopefully there'll be a lot more spotting and marking of objectives and targets, which is good. Just a few other button changes. Grenade was L1, which again got a bit, took some getting used to, but yeah, really to answer the question, I did find it a bit jarring, but I got used to it. I haven't gone back actually to play Battlefield 3 since the Battlefield 4 beta stopped, but I'm sure if I was to go back, I would certainly find it a little unusual, let's say. So yeah, that wraps that question up. Their second question is, do I think that the snipers are not as good when compared to those in Battlefield 3? I think sort of going to say that, can't quite put the finger on it. Perhaps it's, slower bullet velocity or something to it. I do think that the rifles have definitely become quite a different animal, let's say, to what they are in Battlefield 3. I think there's really two reasons why that is. First of all, the netcode, the hitboxes are a lot better in terms of, the netcode is a lot sharper. I didn't have any issues with people jumping around and I wasn't able to hit them. But also, the hitboxes are a lot smaller. If you want that headshot, you've got to aim it up absolutely right. The other thing is the bullet velocity. The standard rifle, the standard sniper rifle that you get, or at least you got in the Battlefield 4 beta, definitely the bullet velocity was pretty slow. The other thing which I had a little bit of trouble getting used to initially was also the sort of vapor trail that leaves off, because it shows you where the bullet goes, which is useful, but also blocks out your actual crosshair a bit, so it's quite tricky to actually figure out if you need to go up or down or not. I'm pretty sure it's this game actually that you'll see me use the rangefinder, which is what I think will help with this, to snipe some targets from a fair distance, which did help. But yeah, it's definitely not as easy. Zeroing the rifle is definitely going to be very important now, as will being accurate, making sure you get that shot on target first time, otherwise your target's going to run away, move away, and you're going to be out of luck on that particular hunt. So yeah, I think that wraps up those two great questions there. Thank you very much, Super Dan, for asking them. Next question comes from Arsenal 2022, and they ask, what's my opinion of the 3 new races being added to the Formula 1 2014 calendar? And for those of you who don't know, they are New Jersey, Sochi, and Mexico, going back to Mexico. So what I will say is, well, Mexico is kind of expected. Sergio has been doing fairly well. He's not certainly been rocking the boat, winning races or anything like that, but he's raised the profile of Formula 1 again in Mexico, and they want to race. So that's fair enough. It's a track which the name escapes me, but I know for a fact that Formula 1 has raced on before. Might need some updating to accommodate the new cars and things, but the track is there and has form. New Jersey, I'm glad that it is on the calendar, at least for now. There's some doubt, or was some doubt, if that was actually going to happen, but the track's going to be interesting. It's going to have that killer view, which is Manhattan in the background. Sochi, I'm not so sure about. I saw a thing which the BBC did last year, it was, where they went with Red Bull actually out there to drive around what was the actual sort of construction yard, and it looks like a fairly kind of generic race circuit, of the modern era. Just a series of corners. Until we see cars actually go round and we actually get a bit of action on the track, I'm not sure if I can really fairly say anything about Sochi or New Jersey for that regard. But I'm hoping that basically that they do give off or allow for overtaking, good racing, good strategy, and in general just a nice spectacle, which I think a lot of the modern tracks haven't really given us. So yeah, Mexico, New Jersey, and Sochi in Russia. Bring them on, I say. I think 22 races in a year is getting a bit ridiculous. There are some tracks which shouldn't be on the calendar and still are due to the money, but I will digress. That's a whole nother question and tangent. But for now, yeah, I'm looking forward to them. It's going to be interesting to see how they pan out. So Arsenal, thank you very much for the great question there. So next two question comes from John Roberts, and they ask, first of all, what age did I have the stabiliser taken off my bike, and have I ever had any real racing experience? So what age did I get my stabilisers taken off my bike? I think I must have been about 10 or 11. I had a rather interesting time learning to ride a bike, actually. So I'm fairly tall, and I always have been for my age, and basically, when I started to learn how to ride a bike, it was too small for me, so I didn't get used to it. Anyway, at the age of like 8 or 9, I had was it an 18 or a 20-inch wheeled mountain bike? Because that physically was the only thing I could comfortably ride. And I still had stabilisers on that, which was a bit comical to look at in hindsight, but oh well. But it was around the age of 10, 11, I think, where I got those taken off. But basically, I had made the mistake where I got used to that bike, got the stabiliser taken off, but then I'd outgrown it again, and I got a new bike. And shortly after, I could ride the bike without the stabilisers; it was fine. But I was riding around my close where I lived, and I fell off, as people do. But I went little fingernail on my right hand first into the asphalt, and those of you who are squeamish, block your ears now. Took the whole damn nail off in one go. Yeah, that was not pleasant, but it was quite cool watching a nail regrow. Anyway, I'll digress. That's a completely different question, but never mind. So yeah, about 10 or 11, I can't be sure to answer that one. And have I ever had any real racing experience? Yes, I have. I've driven and raced go-karts many a time, and I hugely enjoyed that. As I get quite lucky here, trying to be a bit too clever. Yeah, so I've raced go-karts. Oh, I can't, recall the number of times, more than 10 to 15 times, which has always been good fun. I'm not the fastest on, again, accounts of the fact that I'm a big guy, and, oh, here comes the tower. I'm a big guy, and, the acceleration things just isn't there for me. But no, I've done go-karting plenty of times. When I get some money together and I get sort of a house and God only knows what else, I may look at doing some little rally cross kind of thing. So if those of you have seen Top Gear, they did sort of for the same price as a sort of set of golf clubs, motor racing. They went rally crossing, which they were able to buy a car, get the right equipment in there, and do a race for under £1,000, which would be perfect. Because I can save that amount of money in a couple of months, luckily. So yeah, that would be something I'd be very interested in doing, but there's other bits and pieces you need to do first. So anyway, yes, to answer the questions, about 10 or 11, and yes, I have been doing some real racing. So John, thank you very much for your great questions there. Ooh, pardon me. So, next question comes from JT Jumper 231, and they ask, would I ever try watching American football? Well, yes, I have watched American football, so yes, I have tried watching American football. So admittedly, in the UK, we don't tend to see very much of it. There are a number of reasons for it. One that, to be honest, compared to, say, football, which is, what's most watched, and rugby, which is, well, I wouldn't say our version of American football, it isn't, it's a very different game. There isn't much interest for it, so you don't tend to see it very often. However, back in my university days, oh, how I remember them well, I watched the Super Bowl, 2 years on the trot. Now, I forget who the heck played, but I will and do recall that basically I was really surprised. It was the first time I sat down, well actually it was laid down, I watched it in bed because it was 2 o'clock in the morning or something, but I watched the game and I was really surprised how stop-start it was. I knew it wasn't as fast-paced from what other people had told me, but I was surprised by how basically your whole team would switch out if you're attacking or defending, or if the ball goes dead, that's it, you stop and everyone moves on. Whereas, say, something like football or rugby, you don't stop until the ball goes out of play, not if the ball just goes dead. So, So yeah, I have watched it. It's a very interesting game. Not completely my cup of tea, but I do appreciate obviously the skill and the ability. I mean, the throwing, for example, is of quarterbacks, and I've probably got that wrong. I'm amazed at accuracy over that range and distance, but yeah, I have watched it. It's enjoyable in its own way, but it wasn't quite what I expected when I watched it. So JT Jumper, thank you very much for the question there. Great question. Yeah, American football, an interesting game. So yeah, I'll wrap that up there. Next question comes from Chip Off the Block 99, and they ask, am I interested in what Steam and Valve are doing at the moment with the Steam OS and Steam Box and their controller, and do I think it's a good move for them? So what I will say first of all is, yeah, I think it's very interesting, and it's interesting to see what they're kind of trying to do with a console which is a PC which you can upgrade with their own dedicated operating system and a controller which can do a bit more than current controllers. It's very interesting. They're coming from a very different place to say your traditional sort of console manufacturers, Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, which have been very sort of focused on their interpretation of what a console is. I think it has huge potential, is the first thing I'll say. The Steam Box in particular and Steam OS, technically I think is a great idea. The one thing which I wouldn't say necessarily put me off PC gaming, but certainly was a factor, was the cost of first of all getting all a PC together, which would run games for a decent amount of time and all work together nicely. But also to purchase and maintain an operating system. Now that might not sound like much, but my Windows machine, the one I play games on, I solely use it to play games, and keeping up to date with antivirus and all this kind of stuff is a pretty intensive task. When you're literally not using it for anything purposeful. Using a Linux-based operating system for SteamOS, first of all, does two things. It means that you don't have to do necessarily any of that stuff, not to mean that you can just, do whatever you like, you're still vulnerable, but, you're less vulnerable. But it also means that more and more games will be written with an aim to make them, runnable on a Linux-based operating system. And I believe it was one of the producers, actually, from DICE, who said that all, Linux really needs is that one killer game. And, Microsoft are going to have problems with Windows not being the gaming OS for PCs anymore. So yeah, an interesting comment, interesting times ahead really. So I'm interested. I think that Steambox and SteamOS has huge potential. Let's just see what the kind of the limited beta does, and what Valve actually bring to the table next year with their Steam machines. The controller also is quite interesting. It's a very odd-looking thing, but I can see where Valve are coming from. You need something for like an RTS or something like that. You don't want a sort of compromised analog stick setup. You want haptic pointers and things. So yeah, interesting. I'm very interested. I think it's got a lot of potential. Let's see what it does to the market and shake things up a bit. So Chip Off the Block, thank you very much for the great question there. It's going to be an interesting time ahead for gamers next year, almost a merging of consoles and PCs. How about that? So next question comes from IT Flipper 2, and they ask, will I be playing PlanetSide 2 on PS4? And yes, I probably will. It's a free-to-play, so I'll definitely give it a download and a go, and yeah, we will see what happens with it. Yeah, it's obviously has got a huge following on PC, and obviously is very kind of Battlefield-esque in terms of huge maps, lots of players, and lots of objectives to be played. So yeah, I'm looking forward to giving it a go on PS4, and we will see how that one pans out. So yes, IT Flipper, thank you very much for the question. Next question comes from Bob Martin, and they ask, what do I think about people who roll up in a tank and immediately destroy the skyscraper, obviously in Siege of Shanghai? Well, I can understand it being quite frustrating, definitely can. Because obviously, if you have captured that objective, it's a highly valuable objective. You can see the whole map. It's fairly easy to lock down up top, but of course it can be brought down by the tank. And, if it's done immediately, just off the start, to stop that opportunity, it's, well, it denies the opportunity. There's nothing really wrong with that. And definitely, if you want to get up the top of that tower, as I did in this game, and try and do a bit of sniping work, you're obviously going to be frustrated, but it's a legitimate tactic, and it certainly, it limits sort of the playing options. But the thing is, and this is a really nice feature, if you will, of the Levolution, is that you have a drawback from doing this. Helicopters won't be able to be as effective because all the dust and all this kind of stuff. Snipers with their rifles are going to have a harder time. It's definitely it's not just a win-win scenario. You've got to be careful with these Levolution things, and I think a lot of the maps are going to have this kind of give and take, if you will, almost personality to them. So yeah, it's a fair tactic, but it's not one which doesn't have recourse. So always remember that and try and exploit whatever the effect of the Levolution is. So anyway, guys, I've run out of time, unfortunately, and wow, an amazing set of questions there. I hope you've enjoyed the gameplay which I put to that. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. As always, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer for next question time, all you have to do is pop it down in the comment section below. And yeah, if you could leave a like, dislike, whatever you believe this video deserves, that'd be fantastic. And if you want to see some more Battlefield content from myself, and as well as a variety of other things, trust me, there's interesting things coming in the future, please do feel free to subscribe. So guys, thank you very much. I've been Chuggy, and I'll see you next time out on the battlefield.